Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for us to be here with you. And today we have a great person who is going to share all the information that she has through her experience. She is Deborah Di Chiara, and I'm going to read what is going to be this webinar. The title is Teaching and Assessing, Not Just Testing. And some of the information that we're going to share today, or that Deborah is going to share today, is providing 21st century learners with the ideal environment to foster foreign language acquisition and training them to get international certifications can be a challenge nowadays. In this session, we'll be exploring the concept of communicative language teaching together with useful tips and strategies to plan lessons that help our students pass international exams while they learn the language actively to communicate in the real world. Thanks for being here, Deborah.
Thank you, Elsa. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. I'm very happy to be sharing this hour with you today. I can see there are people from Ecuador, from Bolivia, from Argentina. Where are you from? Where are you? Tell us in the chat box. As you can see, there is a chat box there. I'm going to write down welcome everyone so that you can see that you can use that chat box to communicate, because today we're going to have a very active session, and you will be able to share your views, your opinions, your answers there in the chat box. So I can see there are people from Mexico, from Colombia, from Peru, Arequipa, from Uruguay, from Argentina. Welcome, Santa Fe, Avellaneda. Okay, so welcome everyone. So you can use this chat box to share all the information, all your views, your opinions today. Costa Rica as well there, Chaco, Lima, welcome, Temperley, La Paz, Santa Cruz, Argentina, welcome. Okay, good, I'm very happy. Thanks for joining today. So you can use the chat box, but your microphones have been muted and your cameras are off. Okay, so don't worry about that, and you won't be able to read other people's comments, but we'll be reading your comments. Okay, so thanks for being here. And as Elsa was anticipating, today we're going to deal with many concepts. Okay, we'll be exploring the concepts of communicative teaching, and together with that concept that we already know for sure, I will be exploring assessment, testing to get to communicative testing. And then in the second part, we'll be sharing 10 do's and don'ts in communicative language testing. And together with this 10 do's and don'ts, we'll be sharing some ideas, okay? So I would like to start by asking you, what teachers, the educators, why, this is a very general and open question, okay? But I would like to start and finish this webinar by asking you, why is it that our students learn English? Why do they learn English? What are the aims? What are their objectives? Okay, so I would like to read you there in the chat box, because the answers to this question will guide us all throughout the webinar. Okay, so there we've got some answers already. Amelia is saying some because they like it, others because they have to. Okay, and when they have to, what are they aiming at? They learn what they find meaningful. Of course, we'll be talking about the concepts of meaningful learning. Because of their careers, because they would like to travel. In my case, they have to, they need to pass 4 levels to graduate. Good, to communicate in another language. Great, and many of you agree on that. They are learning English because they would like to communicate for different purposes, okay? Some of them for their work, some of them to travel, some of them just to learn about a different culture, different language, some of them because they need to, because they would like to move to a different country. So they would like to get a visa, as you are saying. Okay, Yvonne says, because it's the new universal spoken language, out of interest, changes in education. Okay, thanks for all the answers. And so the second question, which is really connected to this first question, is why do they sit for international exams? Why do they want to get that certification? Okay, why is it? Good. So Nila says to apply for colleges abroad. Good. To get better jobs. Okay. To get a scholarship. Good. To be recognized. Good. To get promoted because it will be useful for universities. Okay. So great to study abroad, to get better jobs, for promotion. So most of us agree on that. And so let me turn off my camera. So this is why they want to get the certifications, but we shouldn't forget that first question and the answers to that first question. Why is it our students are learning English? And in that sense, today we need to start talking about what we've been talking for many years, and which are the principles of communicative language teaching that probably most of us know, okay? Because when we are teaching the language communicatively, when we are providing the context for our students to learn communicatively, we want our students to use the language as a tool, okay? We want them to be able to communicate. So we want them to experiment with the language and try out what they know, okay? We also know that we need to welcome those errors, those mistakes, okay? Because they are indicators that our students are building up their communicative competence. And we also know that we need to focus on accuracy, but on fluency at the same time. And that we need to develop the 4 skills equally, okay? We need to develop the language in a way that integrates all skills, okay, not just focusing on grammar and vocabulary, and of course, let them discover the grammar rules. This is something that we all know, okay? But the problem is, today we will be focusing on assessment and testing. So I'm asking you a question. What's the difference between assessment and testing, okay? We know that assessment is more than testing, okay? And in that sense, as I'm reading your answers there in the chat box, we have been learning the past few years that when we are assessing our students, we are focusing on a process, okay? So we are monitoring our students' work, we are keeping track of what they are learning, but we are focusing on a process, okay? Whereas when we are testing, we are just taking a picture of a specific moment and we are focusing on a product, okay? So when we are testing, we are just referring to one type of assessments and we are measuring achievements. It doesn't mean that assessment is correct and testing is incorrect. They are just different. And we will see that we need both in the English language classroom. Good. Amelia says assessment has to do with the whole process, not just the results. Okay. And this is what we have been saying. So we won't say that testing or summative assessments is a bad word in English language teaching. Why? Because testing, and together with testing, we need to mention those international certifications our students need, will measure the students' achievements. Okay, this is what they can do. This is the result. This is the product. And it will show us as teachers their weak and strong points. And at the same time, it will help us adapt our planning, and it will help us organize future teaching. But we also need to bring assessment for learning or formative assessments into the classroom. Why is that? Because we can use that as a pedagogical tool, not just taking a picture at the end of the period, at the end of a unit, at the end of a year, at the end of a term, but also getting real information, real data of how our students are doing. And in that way, I can adapt my planning, I can take different action plans, and I can also develop certain processes or policies or plans for the future. So, we have said and we have mentioned some of the principles of communicative language teaching. And as a summary, we can say that it focuses on developing the skills, okay? They need to be able to use the 4 skills to use that language in different situations. But if we are talking about testing and communicative testing, what do we mean? We mean that we will be focusing on testing, assessing if our students are able to use that language in realistic and content-specific situations and tasks. I know there are too many concepts, okay, but I wanted to start from communicative language teaching and then to immerse ourselves into assessment and testing. So remember that both are equally important, assessments and testing. But we can also bring that communicative aspects to the testing time. And how is that? We can bring those elements of communicative teaching, okay, integrating, remember the elements we have mentioned, integrating the 4 skills, probably providing students with meaningful situations, with topics that interest them, and putting those aspects to the testing time. So, how is it that we move or that we bring that communicative aspect of teaching to the testing time? Well, we're going to share some do's and don'ts now in a few minutes, but we need to bear in mind that we don't learn the context in isolation, okay? We need to have meaningful context. We need to have scenario-based tests. That is the only way where we can get near communicative testing. Do we have to have mechanical practice? No, we need to move from mechanical to communicative practice to get nearer communicative testing. So, some aspects that we're going to mention now that we are working on the concept of communicative testing. In traditional exam training, we bombard our students with lots and lots of mock exams. We also adapt our lesson plans. We plan just to train for the international exam. We offer students individual practice and we correct those tests, or probably they can use a platform which corrects those tests automatically, and we have little or no reflection at all. Whereas in communicative exam training or in communicative testing, we make use of past paper by providing students with communicative practice. And now we're going to see some ideas. We don't just focus on individual practice, but we offer different dynamics. We can have individual, group practice, okay? The teacher is not at the center of the process because she's not just correcting, but she's encouraging all the class to correct, okay, students to self-correct, and she goes beyond the test. So she designs pre and post tasks connected to the tests, tasks, okay? And then, of course, there is individual and group reflection. So now we're getting to the second part. Now we have explored, we have reviewed the concept of communicative language teaching, and we have brought the concepts of assessment and testing. But as we want to get to communicative testing, we'll be sharing 10 do's and 10 don'ts for communicative exam training. And together with these 10 do's and don'ts, we'll be sharing some useful ideas that you can implement, not just to offer exam training in a communicative way, but also to implement now that we are teaching from home. Okay, so I will need your help here because we will be sharing these 10 do's and don'ts. So I will share the first idea and you will tell me if this is a do or a don't. So what about this first utterance? Assign mock exams from the beginning of the year without tackling each of the tasks individually. Well, some of you say do, but most agree that it's a don't. We shouldn't assign mock exams without first tackling each of the tasks that exam offers to students, because that will overwhelm students. Okay, they will need to learn about the different rubrics, about the tasks, about the instructions, about the strategies, about the test itself, together with the different content and skills. Okay, so this is the first don't. Don't assign mock exams from the beginning of the year, okay? Instead, let's see the second one. Build a habit. Take parts of the exam and integrate them to your daily or weekly routine. Is it a do or don't? Good. Definitely, it's a do, okay? So instead of giving students a lot of mock exams since March, we can take, first of all, then we'll see that we need to get familiar, we as teachers, with the exam layout and format, analyze what students are expected to do in every single task, and then integrate them as part of our routines, okay? So your students will be developing the language and they will be start training for the exam, but without doing a mock exam. And I'm going to give you an example. So, for example, every single or most international exams do have an oral part, okay? So, most of them have personal questions in the first part. So, I've just taken the some cards from the first words Pearson test of English young learners first words, where students have different cards with personal questions. Okay, so in the traditional classroom, let's say, or whenever we are at school, we would probably have a ball game, okay, to practice these questions. So now that we are teaching from home, you can make use of that tool, which is the wheels of names. So you can start or finish your class, your lessons with this tool. I'm going to show you that tool. This is the wheels of names. So it's completely free. It's an online tool. And here, of course, you can customize the wheels of names, and here you can add any contents, okay? You can add questions, you can add incomplete sentences. So you spin the wheel, and so a question is selected. Here you can also insert different names. So you can sort of finish your lessons by playing with that wheels of names, that wheel of names, and so your students can practice the different personal questions for the oral exam as parts of your routine, okay? So it's not you are saying, okay, let's practice for the oral exam for the international exam, okay? So you will be training your students, and you will be practicing for a part of the exam, but your students won't realize they are training for that part. So we're getting to tip number 3. Provide exam practice in isolation. Remember, we are focusing on communicative language testing. Okay, all of you agree that is the don'ts, okay? Don't provide exam practice in isolation. We have said and we have mentioned the importance of providing context for every single practice our students are doing. And of course, this is independent of whether they are training for an exam or not. But if we are practicing and training for an international exam, it's essential that we provide a scenario. And in that sense, that means that you are probably practice a grammar structure or certain contents, but there you will have a character, you will have a situation, okay? So everything is presented, all the tasks revolve around that character or situation. So let me share this example. So we've got here task A, which says complete the gaps with the correct form of the verbs in brackets. And here in task B, we've got Tom is on holiday in London. He sends an email to a friend describing his stay. Read the mail and complete the gaps. So here we've got just sentences with no connection among them. And here we've got an email that Tom has written to Peter. So I'm asking you, which activity is scenario based? Task A or task B? Task B. Okay. All of us agree that if students are reading about two characters in a specific situation, here they will be working on tenses. They will have to decide on the correct tense for each of the verbs in the gaps. But they will be reading about story, okay, about what Tom did there in London, okay? So we will be providing students with a scenario, and this is very simple. We can provide a story, a character, and connect the different activities even when we are training for an international exam. This is essential for our students to learn the language meaningfully. Let's go to tip number 4. Go beyond the tests. Exploit the scenario. Yes. All of you agree that this is definitely a do, okay? We need to go beyond the tests, okay? And let's have a look at an example, okay? This is also part of a Pearson test of English young learners, where students have to write questions which are part of a dialogue, okay? So here Ben is talking to the waiter, and so he's asking questions to the waiter, okay? So students will need to write those questions Ben is asking. So this is just situation, they are in a restaurant and they are talking to a waiter, okay? But what can we do with that task? Okay, not just stay there, okay? When they finish completing the questions, stay like that. We can take that dialogue, okay, and let's role play. Who'd like to be the waiter? Who'd like to be Ben? And what about the other members of the family? Okay, we are having dinner in this beautiful restaurant. Okay, and let's interview the waiter. Or from this situation, Ben is interviewing the waiter, but let's interview special characters. Let's interview people working in different places. Okay, so Ben has interviewed a waiter, but whose parents or who would like to interview a doctor? Who would like to interview an actress? Let's find out about the different professions. Okay, or they can even invent their own version of that dialogue at the restaurants. So they can even, if you're there, you can use the different social networks like YouTube and Instagram, and with their parents' consent, they can interview their parents, their relatives, their grandparents, asking about the different professions, okay? So your students will be practicing the language. They will be creating different questions, focusing on accuracy, but at the same time developing fluency, but going beyond the task. And they will never forget. They will have interviewed their auntie or their cousins or grandparents for the English class. And they have even recorded that interview on YouTube. Tip number 5. Find a connection between the topic in the tests and the students' worlds. Yes, it's definitely a do. Okay, we have learned that many years ago, again, for learning to take place, the topic, the content needs to be relevant to our lives. Okay, we have a purpose when we are learning. Okay, and you have mentioned many of your students are learning English because they would like to be able to communicate abroad, or because they would like to be able to study or take part or take up a course which is in English, or probably travel, or because they would like to communicate with YouTubers around the world. Okay, so we need to find out about our students' likes, interests, and go beyond the tests to get nearer to our students' life and lives. In that sense, for example, here we have, again, this is part of Pearson test of English General, and here this is a listening comprehension activity. Students have to hear a presentation, and they've got some notes here. And so they need to listen and complete the notes, fill in the gaps, okay? But the text here describes or talks about the internet, about the future, but mostly it's connected to the future of the internet, okay? So what can we do? We can ask them, okay, what about the internet? And you wouldn't say internet is not important for our students, okay? So what about internet for you? How do you use the internet? How often do you use the internet? Do you like surfing, or do you just, how many apps do you use in internet? So you can ask your students to do some research at school again, and to find out about their partners, their classmates, likes, activities connected to the internet. And then what can they do? They can create a poster, infographics by using Canva. So remember that Canva, I guess many of you might know Canva, but Canva is a graphic design tool which offers hundreds of templates. Okay, so here you've got a poster, an infographic. So when you open that, you've got beautifully designed posters that you can edit. Okay, so your students can take that poster, that template, and they can add content in English. So they can write, for example, my findings as regards the internet at school. Okay, so they can say, I don't know, 50% of my classmates just use internet on their phone, and 90% use Instagram and TikTok. Okay, so I read that some of you are using. Yes, we as teachers love Canva because it offers many templates for us as well. So you can design cards, but it can be a great tool for education. Okay, so from that task in the test, you can just ask your students to do some research, to design a poster, to create a presentation with some findings as regards the internet nowadays and how the use of internet has increased during the pandemic, for example. Okay, so we can go beyond, but at the same time care about our students' interests and likes for meaningful learning to take place. Tip number 6. Do many past papers. Try to read your answers. Don't. Some of you says you do. Okay, remember that a lot of past papers will not guarantee your students pass the exam. Okay, I mean, overwhelming them and bombarding them with a lot of past papers will not guarantee they will pass the exam. Of course, they need to get familiar with the exam layout and format. Of course, they will need to develop strategies, but asking them to do a lot of past papers will not guarantee they pass the exam. Instead, we think you should better focus on developing strategies. Okay, first of all, developing the language skills and the contents, and develop strategies for students to get familiar with the test formats to know what they have to do in the exam. So this is definitely a do. Okay, so we need to develop strategies. I know that there are different international exams, and some of them have got very specific tasks. So students need to get familiar with what they have to do and what is expected of them in those exam tasks. So let's see some ideas. For effective language production, students need to know for every single test how many parts that test offers. So does it have a written part, oral part, just an oral part? How many parts are there in the written exam? What are the objectives of each part? What do you expect your students to do in each part? Here will they be working on reading comprehension skills, or just on grammar, or just on the ability to understand specific details in that listening part, or just to get the gist for that part? So what is the objective of each part? What about the instructions for each of the parts? What do they have to do? How many times will they have to listen to that? Just once, just twice? Okay, how many minutes do I have to complete that reading comprehension task? And what about the task types and the type of language they are expected to produce in every single task, because we know that every single international exam varies from one another. So, for example, some ideas. Of course, I'm sure that if you are training your students, you might already be doing that. But for example, here we've got some parts of an international exam, which is a Pearson test of English general. Okay, so here, the value of reading instructions, okay? And we need to encourage students that it's very important that they read instructions very carefully. They don't read and they just want to do the task, and they may miss important parts. For example, here, we can encourage them to highlight the most important parts. How many seconds do I have for that section? Well, I have 10 seconds. What do I have to do? Okay, it's a listening task, but I will need to put a cross, okay? And then I have 10 seconds to choose the correct option. What about section number 2? Here, in the first sentence, the instructions are already anticipating me the topic, okay? So I will be hearing a recording about shoes. So you can ask and train your students to start activating prior knowledge they've got connected to shoes, okay? So this is a technique you can also use, okay, when you are training and practicing for the exam. Okay, so let's activate words connected with shoes. Okay, where could these people be if they are talking about shoes? At the shopping center, okay, at the shoes shop, okay, here. How many times will I hear that recording? Okay, twice. Okay, here they will be checking spelling as well. So I need to be careful with my spelling. Okay, and for example, this is another task for the lower levels for the Pearson test of English. And so here they have to read that part and choose the correct picture. So again, highlighting keywords may help students to find the answers more quickly. So here we are talking, please meet Colin at the airport at 10 tomorrow. He's got short, dark hair and wears glasses. He will be with his daughter. So the keywords is he, we're talking about a man, okay? And what about his physical appearance? Short, dark hair, okay? And he's wearing glasses. So we need to tackle each of the tasks individually and develop these strategies which have to do with reading instructions and also identifying powerful pieces of information that might help our students the day of the exam. At the same time, of course, what we've been doing, working on predictions, okay? Predicting what they will have to write in that task and working on meta-language. In that sense, they've got here different questions, okay? This is part of a reading comprehension. It's also an international exam. So here, students are asked, for example, what are the children studying at school? So we need to ask them, okay, can you identify the keywords, the WH words? Okay, so if they are asking for what, the answer could be a subject or a topic, okay? If a question starts with when, of course, there you might have the time, the day, week. Which type of words are we expected to write there? How are the children going to travel? Okay, so there we'll probably have means of transport. So we'll need to start by train, by car, by on foot. How much is the school trip? So here we're expected to write a price or a number. Okay, so by activating all that probably prior knowledge and predicting possible answers, we are helping our students and developing strategies as well. Here, another part of an international exam. Listening task. They will hear that conversation and they will need to choose the correct picture. What can they do here? Okay, in pairs, let's describe each of the pictures. You can work on picture descriptions so that they activate vocabulary and words connected to each of the pictures, and probably they are going to mention many of the words in that listening task. So in that sense, if we develop those strategies the day of the exam, they will be doing that activity, activating prior knowledge and guessing what the answer might be on their own. Tip number 8, monitor your students' learning and give feedback. Is it a yes or no? Yes, definitely. Remember, we have been talking about assessments, the importance of formative assessment, assessment for learning. And in that sense, this is very important, not just for our students to get ready and to pass the international exam, which is one of the objectives probably for your students and for you for that year, but also to adapt your lessons, okay? To know your students' strengths and weaknesses and what you need to reinforce, okay, what you need to work on. So in that sense, when we are at school, we can use that thumbs up or thumbs down technique. But now that we are teaching from home and learning from home, you can use those real-time tools like Menti or Slido, okay, where at the end of a lesson or at the beginning of a lesson, you can assess your students' knowledge, okay? So you can probably revise contents from previous lesson and you can get and grasp what they have learned and what they haven't and what you need to focus on in this lesson. But traffic lights are also great. So it's great your students share the points they are still finding difficult or those aspects or contents of the exam training they are doing okay. And we can also implement the exit slips. The exit slips are aspects they are taken at the end of the lesson. So before we leave, you will need to tell me an exit slip. Okay, tell me something you have learned today. Something. Of course, you can adapt that according to your students' ages and the level of English, but what have you learned today? Okay, new words, new strategy, new content. Have you developed any skill? And remember, you can also use observation forms and make use of checklists, not just teacher checklists, but also you can implement group checklists, okay? And remember the importance of sharing the lesson's aim at the beginning and then at the end, giving students space to reflect on that lesson aim. Okay, what have we been working on today? What have we learned? How do you find that topic? Is it still difficult for you? What have we learned? Okay, so we can implement some of these techniques to check, to track and monitor our students' progress and to see how to adapt the lessons. Number 9, encourage peer assessment and self-assessment. And this is part of assessment for learning and communicative testing as well. Remember, not just the teacher correcting, but also giving opportunities to students to self-assess and to assess their peers. And we're going to share some tools and strategies you can use to implement. Flipgrid is a great tool. So it's a tool you can use. The audio won't be very good, but you can assign a task as a teacher here, and I'm going to unplug. And so they can share the different oral tasks, for example, and so they can even get feedback to their classmates' answers. Okay, so you can practice for the oral exam by using Flipgrid.
For about 15 years.
Okay, probably the audio is not very good, but this is just for you to see that you will be able to see all your students' answers here, but they will be able to see their classmates' answers, and they would be able to add comments. And in that sense, apart from Flipgrid, we've got some techniques and some ideas you can use for peer feedback and learning. Think, pair, share. Of course, now you can use breakout rooms if you are using Zoom, okay, and give some minutes for your students to think in pairs and then to share their ideas. Okay, so they can work on that task, for example, picture description, picture comparison in pairs, and then share the ideas when we go back to the main room. I love that one, 2 stars and a wish. That is a technique that you can use for your students to give feedback to their classmates. So they can listen to a task, an oral task, and they will be the teachers. So they will have to say 2 positive aspects of their classmates' performance and a wish. And in that wish, they will have to include something their classmates need to improve, to work on. Okay, so you can help your students with certain guides, okay, so that they know what to assess, what to listen. But of course, if you've been doing and training for this oral exam, they know what is expected of them to produce. So they will be teachers assessing their classmates. So they will need to share 2 positive aspects of their performance and something they will need to improve, a wish. And then, of course, this is great for mixed ability classes. So you can have expert envoys. So if you've got some students who are very good at speaking or at listening, so they can be the experts, but you will have many experts in the class, and so they can help their classmates improve that skill, that part. Okay, Peter is very good at grammar, so he can help you with the use of English parts in case the exam has got a use of English parts. And then this is also great for summative assessment, 3 facts and a fib. Okay, when you would like to test, they will have to say 3 truths, 3 facts which are true of that topic you've been teaching, and a fib. And so their classmates will have to discover which answer is incorrect. And finally, we've got number 10. Train your students with a communicative edge. And after these 50 minutes, we have to say this is definitely a yes. So remember, we can use some strategies to implement and to train our students communicative. And in that sense, it's very important that we as teachers familiarize ourselves with the syllabus, with the test format, and with each of the test tasks. Because in that sense, we will know how to train, how to adapt the coursebook tasks, our lesson plans, so that we are training at the same time for the international exam. But first, we need to get familiar with what our students need to do in that international exam. Then, we need to make sure that our students are exposed to the target language of the level, that is to say, or the structures, the vocabulary, and that we are developing the skills, they will be assessed in that international exam. We need to plan our training periods. What, when, how often? Okay, how are we going to develop the speaking skill? Okay, so I'm going to use the wheels of names at the beginning of my classes. And then as from July, I'm going to have twice a week different games to train for the oral exam. And remember, do not give your students a complete mock exam at the beginning of the year. You can take those different tasks of the test and tackle them individually, and they will be training so that by the time they try that mock exam, they are successful. If possible, you can encourage that self-assessments, peer assessments, and class correction in order for your students to learn from their and their classmates' mistakes, okay? So remember, it's very important that we don't teach for the exam. Students are not just training to pass an exam. Of course, they need that certificate to be able to apply for that job, to be able to get that visa. But then eventually they will need to be able to communicate, to use the language in that job, at that university, in that country, in that trip. So remember, it's very important that we as teachers focus on the language and on the strategies our students need to get in order to pass that exam, so that students could learn and just certify their level of English. So the certificate needs to be just what it is. You are certifying your level of English, but it's not the main aim of our lessons. It's not the main purpose of our course. We are teaching the language. We are providing the context for our students to learn English meaningfully. So remember that the key is for the test to integrate naturally to what you are already doing in class, and which might probably be providing motivating context for active and meaningful learning to take place. So before we finish, we would like to share some news which has to do with the Pearson test of English. And in that sense, we would like to share with you that Pearson test of English General and Young Learners are changing their names. So they will become Pearson English International Certificates and Pearson English International Certificates Young Learners. This is part of our complete solution for assessments, because we've got different products and services to place, to benchmark, to certify and verify your students' level of English. We've got the level test, benchmark tests, Pearson tests, and at the same time, these international exams, and then the PTA academic for visas and to be able to move to a different country. So we would like to share today that PTE, Pearson Test of English, is changing its name. So they will become Pearson English International Certificates and Pearson English International Certificates Young Learners. But we would like to make sure that the name is changing, and we are changing the name because we think it will be beneficial for both students and institutions, as it reflects the purpose of the certification. So if we analyze each of the parts, the part will have Pearson, as the certification is awarded by Pearson Edexcel. We'll have English because it's the language that we certify. It will have international because that would be an international certification. And of course, certificates because that is an official certificate is not a placement test or similar. But we wanted to share with you, and we would like to reassure that although the names are changing, there won't be changes as regards the tests themselves. So the format, the length of the test, the question types, the assessment standards are the same. That will not be changing. It's just a name change to reflect the sense, the essence, sorry, of the certification. Okay, so these new names will be included on the certificates as from December 2020, and for 1 year, both names will be on the certificates. Okay, so they will have Pearson Test of English General and Pearson English International certificates as from December 2020. Okay, so it's 7 o'clock, and I would like to thank you for sharing so many ideas and for being such a great audience, sharing your yes, no, your tips, your comments. Okay, so you will get an email with the different with the recording. Okay, and there you will be able to have access to the recording. Okay. So you can write to us in case you have any questions as regards Pearson Test of English and the name change. And we hope that you start just testing communicatively in your English language classrooms. Okay, so we hope that these different tips and strategies we have shared today are useful for you, and that you enjoy and that your students develop the language apart from getting that certificates. Okay, you will get the certificates by email. Okay, Charlie. So thank you very much, and okay, keep in touch. Take care and see you around. Thank you. Before we leave, would like to share with you a form to give us your feedback. Okay, so we appreciate you complete that form and you share that feedback with us. Okay, thank you very much, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.